Africa is working to promote development, to protect the environment and advance women's rights. Yet in many countries, widespread hunger and poverty persist. So what's land got to do with it? Across rural Africa, land is food, income, identity and security. It is opportunity and respect. Without secure rights to land and natural resources, rural people may fail to invest in their farms or to sustainably manage their natural resources. Without secure land rights, women inherit poverty, not property. Without secure, documented rights, local people may lose their land to large-scale investors looking for productive land and natural resources. Secure rights to control, use, and benefit from the land are essential. Development programs can take these rights for granted, yet they are anything but secure. You care about sustainable development, about economic growth that benefits the poor. On this continent rich with forests, farmland, precious metals, and petroleum, it is time to care about people's rights to land and natural resources. Whether based on written or unwritten law, these rights must be recognized and strengthened. Development programs that incorporate these rights give people ownership of their efforts. They empower local people to achieve lasting change. It's time to act on land and natural resource rights. It's time to own it. We invite you to explore FOLA to learn more about how land and natural resource rights impact development and how they can be strengthened.
On September 29, 2005, a new New Orleans was born. As Hurricane Katrina passed, the federal levee system that was designed to protect the city failed. 80% of New Orleans was flooded. Quiet as it was kept, even before Hurricane Katrina, a decision had been made that would greatly impact the landscape of the city. The plan was to partially demolish the first public housing complexes that had been built in New Orleans back in the 1940s. Public housing residents were accustomed to weathering tough storms. In fact, the solid brick and plaster buildings had long been refuges of last resort for public housing residents and also their relatives who knew the buildings to be virtually hurricane-proof. While many residents of these housing projects believed the buildings could have been renovated, the local and federal governments took the storm and the flooding as an opportunity to eradicate 4 of the major public housing complexes in New Orleans and to replace them with new mixed-income housing.
Abidjan, Nairobi, Asuncion, Kampala, Phnom Penh. These are some of the dynamic capitals of the developing world. In the affluent sections of these cities, residents take water supply and sanitation services for granted. Water flows freely from the tap. However, a large part of their population, sometimes as much as 70% of the people living in these cities and in others in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, do not have direct access to water supply and sanitation services. They are the urban poor. They live in ghettos, bidonvilles, shanties, townships, or barrios. In these settlements, water and sanitation are provided by vendors.
Vendors are there because the utilities fail to get to the people. So the vendors are acting as pipes. In a sense, human pipes.
Who are these descendants of Africans who are scattered throughout the world? What are their stories? What did they contribute to global culture? And why don't we know more about them and their stories? The answers lie in the guilty and painful silences surrounding the more than 1,500 years of history of the enslaving of African peoples in distant lands. Slavery existed throughout the world, and the word slave comes from the Slavic people enslaved in many societies. But in modern times, when most people think of slavery, they think of sub-Saharan Africans and their descendants enslaved in lands across the Sahara Desert, the Red Sea, and the Indian and Atlantic Oceans.
Le rapport à l'esclavage n'est pas encore totalement éteint. La société est encore plus ou moins marquée par cela, mais en même temps, ce qui est paradoxal, on a l'impression qu'il y a une amnésie. Comment peut-on admettre que nos arrière-parents, nos grands-parents et que nos ancêtres ont pu, en effet, réduire des êtres humains à une simple marchandise, à un simple outil de travail?
There are over 200 million migrants around the world, all in search of a better life, for them and for the family they left behind. This year alone, the World Bank estimates that migrant workers from various countries will send back home some $283 billion. Labor migration has been a lifeline for the people of poor countries around the world and the countries with flourishing economies. What sets migrant laborers apart from the population in their host countries is their willingness to work long hours for low wages and difficult environments.
Géographiquement parlant, ma ville c'est la plus belle. Cette colline, douce rivière, un peu de poussière et aussi quelques poubelles. C'est fou ce qu'on a du bol. Les oiseaux nous servent leur symphonie. On attaque la vie, un brin de sourire, un petit bol d'air et un petit bol de bouillie. Hein? On veut bien noyer nos soucis, mais hélas ils sont trop bons nageurs. Alors du coup on attaque la vie avec le sourire d'un bon petit dragueur. On veut tous faire la cour au bonheur, mais on n'a pas tous sa sympathie. Moi j'ai compris qu'il faut se lever de bonheur pour se faire une place, surtout ici dans la sainte patrie. Et quoi qu'il arrive, moi je garde le sourire, je me dis quoi, ça pourrait être pire. Alors, si t'arrives à l'instant, vas-y, respire, prends ton temps, on va faire un tour, vas-y viens, suis-moi.
Cities in Cameroon. It is one of the first countries in Africa where urbanization surpasses 50%. But while this urban context plays a determining role in the country's economy, infrastructure and basic services are not keeping up with the fast population growth. A rising rural depopulation drives this growth. In some cities, the population increases by 6% every year. What would be the cost of upgrading entire neighborhoods in Cameroon's main cities? How long would it take to come to the help of the poorest? How to ensure maintenance of the upgraded infrastructure? What resources are available? These are some of the questions that the partners to the development of Cameroon must address to satisfy the needs of an urban population that doubles every 13 years.
The objective is to improve the life of people living in poor neighborhoods while facilitating their contribution to the economy of their cities. This involves improving access to basic services, such as water and sanitation, transport, socio-economic facilities, etc., in the most efficient way.
Dans la plupart de nos villes, tout au moins les plus grandes,
in most of our large cities, around 70% of the people live in slum areas. That's practically the whole city.
donc il fallait faire quelque chose.
Something had to be done. Several attempts were made in the past. The last one, and the most significant, was the nylon operation in Douala in the late 70s and early 80s. That's almost 25 years ago. Since then, not much has been done, no major operations anyway.
Something had to be done.